So, very welcome to this first day of a two-day event. Tomorrow it goes on in Beursschouwburg because this is a collaboration between Kunstpunt, Argos, Beursschouwburg, KASKlezing, and I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. Did I? No, it's a lot of people, but I think we got them. Anyway, so this is a two-day event where we will talk about the strategies for distributing film and video. And so today we would like to introduce you to different possibilities of bringing your work to an audience. Oh, the mic is loud again, that's good. So hopefully it inspires you to find strategies of your own. Because of course we will not give you magical formulas, this is just to inspire you. So depending on your work, which can be labeled short film, fiction or documentary, experimental film, artist film or video, and I'm sure there's loads of other labels around, you can show your film or video in film festivals, galleries, a cinema, online. And so today we would like to address these different strategies, thanks to our guests who are here to share their experience and expertise. Thank you so much for being here. So first, Dirk de Wit from Kunstpunt will sketch the audiovisual landscape in Belgium. Then Emmy Oost from Cassettes for Timescapes. She will share her experience. Marie Logie will talk about August Orts. Helena Kritis will introduce a hands-on approach based on her experience working as a curator for Beursschouwburg and Film Festival Rotterdam. And Philippe Ramos will talk about Vdrome, the online video platform. The idea is that each guest will give a brief introduction of their practice and their organization. And then afterwards we will join in a conversation which Godard and me will moderate. So, do you have something to add?
Not really. Maybe it's something very small, and I think it's the context we are in. That if you haven't seen the exhibition, I think it's quite interesting to have a discussion now about how, let's say, less common works should be presented or can be presented. Having this in an exhibition where they look back to the 70s and the 80s, a very specific cinema in Ghent, where they did these kind of things. I think on a historical level it's interesting to have these parallels. And if you haven't seen the exhibition, you should definitely check it. I think that's it. Yeah, maybe some more thing. If you have questions, because it will be like a talk, please write them down or something. But I think it would be more interesting to answer these questions with the whole, with all the speakers, because maybe it can be like a starting point for discussion. So please write them down or save them, and then afterwards we could answer them instead of in between.
So yes, this first guest is Dirk de Wit. He works for Kunstpunt, Flanders Arts Institute, responsible for international relations and visual arts. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much. So Flanders Arts Institute is a support organization, so we deal with information, practice support and practice development, and also international relations. So we facilitate sustainable relations between artists, producers, organizations here and abroad. I will be very brief introduction of the ecosystem in which, of the value chain in which these hybrid art versus audiovisual productions are produced and find an audience, as Anouk already said. So this is a slide I will just go through. Here below is the artist run and artist-centered organizations. It means organizations which were set up by artists to produce and distribute their work. There is also independent producers active, and there is also public funding. This is on the production side. And on top is the audience. And there is make a distinction between the large audience, let's say the citizens, which are really interested in looking to art, but there is also a kind of audience which is the peers and the professionals, let's say the inner circle of the art world, and there is the art market. And they are linked with values. So finding an audience, I think it's the wish of every artist that your work is seen by an as diverse audience as possible. This is a kind of public value, because you make it to share it with an audience. The professionals play also a very important role, and the peers, because they also are important to valorize your work, to give it a certain meaning, and also to bring it to the other professionals. And this is very much kind of a symbolic value. And the market value is when your work, especially in the visual arts scene, is sold, then it's a kind of market value. To bridge these art productions and all these different type of audiences, there is a number of mediators. So the public mediators is those who bring this work to the audience. There is first public space. So some of more and more productions are commissions by private or public initiatives. It can be the city, it can be the railway station who wants work, and it can be an audiovisual work. So there is more and more possibilities in public sphere and also public commissioning. Of course, there is all types of festivals, and especially the public festivals, not the professional ones, who play an important role in finding this audience, and also for the visual art, it's more the biennials. And of course, then there is all this type of art centers at large. It is both the cinemas, the cultural centers, the museums, the art spaces. They play an important role. There is also broadcast, public broadcast, private broadcast, who often broadcast film and video, and there is more and more online initiatives to bring these artworks more direct to the audiences who are just sitting at home before their laptop or private media. The second, if you want to reach these professionals, I think the most important way to do it is through the festivals, which are the professional film and video festivals, and the biennials. Because it's not so much the large audience who goes there, but it's professionals who goes there, and they can discover your work, they can valorize it, they can say it's great work, and also some of the professionals might screen your work then in a festival and art center. And there is also more and more professionals gather in all types of master classes, conferences in which artists are invited to talk about their work. And sometimes very important to accept these invitations, because it's a way to bring your work not so much to this large audience, but all these professionals and peers who will take along your work and your name and give it a certain value. If you want to sell your work to private collections, there is the private gallery who is doing it, and also all type of art fairs, and this art, because art centers, so it's art fairs. And then to bridge these gaps in between these artists and all these places, so the producer plays an important role to distribute the work to these diverse places. And often the producer is the artist, him or herself. Often there is a producer, an independent producer, or it can be the producer who is hired by an artist-run collective who decides to work together and engage a producer. There is the distributor, and the distributor is specialized in finding both these professional gatherings where the work can be promoted, and the distributor is also available for any kind of rentals that these festivals and art center when they decide to screen, or when the distributor plays the role of bringing that work to these places. And so in many cases it's the artists who are doing this work themselves. And this is more or less the same. So to bring this work to these more promotion platforms, which help you finding these places for screenings or exhibitions, it is indeed often the producer, which is often the artist, and the distributor will always look together with the artist what is the best way to promote your work and to bring it to these different places. I've put here Flanders image because this is an export office, let's call it, linked with the Flemish Audiovisual Fund, and they have also the mission to promote the works which were produced with the help of their funding. And so to finalize, to bring your work really to the art market and also to these professional gatherings, the promotion gallery plays an important role. And there is a difference between galleries at large who just sell artworks and the promotion gallery. The promotion gallery will actively promote the artist and the works of the artist and the different possibilities, let's say the private collections. Next slide. So there is a small distinction between the audiovisual scene and ecosystem and the visual art scene. And so for the audiovisual art scene, it's very much the film festivals, the art house cinemas, and cultural centers, the multidisciplinary art centers, broadcast and online. This stays the same. And this is the professional film festivals. And online I've put encoded because it's a lot of these festivals for professionals. They find the works on online platforms in which they have kind of private access. So this is not about public, this is not about screening. This is giving professionals access to your work through online platforms which is only dedicated to professionals. For the visual arts, so this is more the biennials, museums, all types of art spaces, festivals, conferences online. So you see there is a kind of hybrid possibilities in the distribution of your work, whether it's in the more audiovisual sphere or a visual arts sphere, and a lot of productions can find their way in both sectors. If we speak about, for example, in Flanders, about festivals and biennials, there is of course Contour, there is like the front Contour is a biennial, museums, it's very large, it can be SMAC or MUCA, it can be Wheels, 33, broadcast, it's VRT, but also private broadcast companies. And now more insight in workload and revenue. This is a theoretical model because most of the artists, producers or artist-run initiatives, they will have a hard time to bring that work in these different spheres. So the workload is in red. It's the producers, the artists who will bring this, discuss first together with the artists a kind of strategy. So where will we promote the work? In which kind of spaces? Which kind of professional festivals? There's an enormous amount of festivals everywhere in the world which are open to, for example, the competitions, or they make selections for their programs, and it's a lot of work for the producer or sometimes for the artist, and if possible together with the distributor to make a selection in these festivals you want to send your work. And often the festivals will ask a fee to participate in a competition. So it's a lot of work, filling in the application forms, sending the material, often online, sometimes even paying a fee, and hopefully you will be selected, and hopefully you are in a competition. And then hopefully in these professional festivals, you will find possibilities for all these other screeners worldwide to pick up your work. Once this work is done, of course you wait until these professionals will contact the artist, or sometimes the producer, or if you have a distributor, who contact the distributor to screen the work. And then there is handling. The work must be sent, there is always a fee, so it must be paid. There's negotiations about the fee, they will ask texts. So this is happening here. And so what I've put in green is like, what is, apart from all this work, what is the possible revenue? So who will pay something for your screenings? So a lot of online distribution is free. So there's some platforms they don't pay. And you will decide to put your work there because it will find an audience. You will decide to, that's important that your work finds an audience and you are not paid. For broadcast, they always pay, but always less and less. Sometimes also nothing. And if you decide to say, okay, they ask to screen my work, I won't be paid, you hope that it will have an effect on the kind of symbolic value of your work, that your name is better known, and that maybe in the future, if you make another work with a better name, that will attract other types of funding. Most of the cultural centers, art house, cinemas, museums, art spaces, they will pay a fee. They will pay a screening fee for one screening, for a week, and even a museum in its screened for a month or 2 months, you will pay a lump sum. Kind of you negotiate on a certain kind of price for this type of screening. So some of the money comes back. Most of the festivals, you would expect that the festival also pays at least a small fee for all the artists, but we see that more and more public festivals hardly pay a fee because they say, well, we lost funding, the funding is going down, we don't have money, and then it's up to you to decide whether it's important that your film is screened there or not. I say this because at the end, I think there is a big question. The last slide deals with the workload and the kind of revenue. Most of these professional festivals, as I said, sometimes you even have to pay to apply for being selected in a competition, for example. When your work is sold via an art fair or a gallery show, then there is always payment. You negotiate together with the gallery how much your video will be sold, and often it's 50-50, so 50% for the gallery and 50% for the artists. What I also have to say is that the distributors, for example, Argos, who is also part of this initiative, is a distributor and is publicly funded. They will always, when they start distributing a work, discuss with you about what are their costs. They have to make copies, sometimes they have to make subtitles, they have to make some costs for promotion, and they will always deduct it from all the revenues which come in. So your work is distributed and it will maybe be screened 10 times, and you get a kind of percentage of the rental fee. There is always these basic costs that Argos, in this case, will make, which will be deducted. So that means that the distributor will make sure that their work is valorized. And often the artist's work not. So that's a kind of big problem. And so distributors, some of the distributors have public funding, like Argos, and there is also like private initiatives, private distributors, and they make their living out of distributing work and all the kind of revenue which comes from screenings, which they divide between themselves and with the artists. And then these private initiatives, they have to survive based on these kind of revenues. It means that they will always look to the kind of market potential of your work if they decide to distribute your work. So this is while the publicly funded distributors like Argos, they have a more public mission and they try to be as diverse as possible in the kind of catalog of works they distribute. I'm almost to the end. So there is a big question in like financing the production of your work, the distribution, also making out of this work living. There is also more, apart from revenue from distribution and sales through the art market, there is also more and more possibilities for co-production. So not only screenings or exhibitions with co-productions. So of course art which is commissioned by public authorities, it is always paid. There is always a production fee, there is even a fee for the artist, that's covered. Festivals will never co-produce. The film festivals will never co-produce. The biennials, the big biennials, they more and more co-produce. If you look to, for example, Contour in Mechelen, almost half of the works, and there is often a lot of video, is co-produced by Contour. A lot of art centers, cultural centers, they more and more co-produce. It's a little bit the model of the performing arts. I see Lena, so Beursgaarburik, for example, is an organization who co-produces, Stuk co-produces, Reinverte co-produces, Wheels co-produces. For example, the film of Sven Augustin, which was also presented as an exhibition, it was co-produced by Wheels. So this is a very important shift that the visual arts organizations, museums, take their responsibility in co-producing and also presenting the work. So if you have a co-producer, you are sure that your work is presented, and often these art centers have very good international networks and can also on their own find co-producers to enlarge even the partners, the money which comes in, and also the screening and exhibition possibilities. Broadcast, less and less co-producers. So I think Arte, VRT, before they had really some co-production budgets, that this is really going down. And often, some distributors and also some promotion galleries, they think they can invest in a work because it will bring in money. So it's rare that some distributors will invest in the production, and often the galleries will also invest in the work. A last slide, of course, apart from revenue to screenings and exhibitions, co-productions, there is of course public funding. Public funding for audiovisual / visual arts productions based on moving image. So there is the Flemish Audiovisual Fund, and there is the kind of the ministry, the Department of Culture, Youth and Media. So the Flemish Audiovisual Fund, they have only project funding. They don't fund organizations. They fund training and they fund promotion. And the agreement is that everything which is a single screen, whether it's in an exhibition space, on a television, in a cinema, or online, doesn't matter. When it's single screen, you can apply for funding within the Flemish Audiovisual Fund. Everything which is beyond the single screen, it's installations, multi-screen artworks. This is the art degree. And so in the Flemish Audiovisual Fund, they have funding structure. It's either more experimental work, it's film lab, there is animation, documentary, and feature film. So what I want to say is that some artists want to make feature film, like Johan Grimonplay, for example, which is a bit experimental, but it's a large-scale production. He will decide to apply for money within feature film. Documentary can be experimental, and then you have the choice in between applying within documentary or within the film lab. And animation, for example, Michael Samijn and Aurea Harvey, they make kind of more artistic games. So they have the choice between animation or film lab. And often the people choose for animation or documentary or feature film because the budgets are a little bit higher. And so this is kind of the genres. Within these genres, you can ask money for development. It means finding funding for your work, a scenario, I forgot, and then production, post-production, promotion. And then within the art degree, the Kunstdekret, the advantage is that there is not only funding for development and projects, but also structural funding for organizations. So, for example, Argos, who is a distributor, they are funded for a 5-year period. For example, August Orts, which is an initiative by artists to work, let's say, collectively or to work common on production and distribution. They have also funding for 5 years. So this is a fantastic combination because you can ask for funding for an organization which deals with the production and distribution and the development of work on, for more than one artist. And on the other hand, for each of the projects, you still have the possibility to ask within the VAF for a kind of film project funding for development of production. And even within the art degree, there is a possibility for these projects or for development, like scholarship, beurzen, to combine it. But these projects are often asked by the artists, while the funding for the organization is of course asked by the organization. I don't want to go too much in detail, but the art degree is more open. They don't have any more this kind of labels, funding for performing arts or funding for visual arts. You can decide yourself in which discipline you want to ask for money, and can be a mixture of disciplines, and also functions. And functions are development, production, presentation, participation, and reflection. But I think there is other sessions within KASK in which these funding principles are explained, I guess. The last slide. I find, if you go back to this slide, for example, it's an incredible amount of work to produce work and to bring it to the audience through all these mediators. And all these mediators, they have funding or they have private money to survive, and people can make their living. Artists are at the end of the value chain, they have the weakest position, and sometimes do a lot of work. They invest a lot of money to bring this work to audiences, very often for free. And so there is a big question, I think, in responsibilizing these players to pay fees, exhibition fees, and there is also a responsibility to co-produce work. And I think artists can also invent new models to work together. I think Augustorts, Jubilee, Escoville are good examples with funding. There's Mesidor and a number of new initiatives which will come up without funding, in which artists decide to work together to do this work of the producer and the distributor together, share contacts, and even work on the distribution of each other's works. So not only to do it yourselves, but to do it collectively. And it reminds a bit to the 60s and the 70s, in which the film corps, film cooperatives were invented. I don't think we have to go back to the 60s. We have to think about the new models of today, but sharing, mutualization, cooperation. There is something to be done, I think, for the next generation. Thanks.
I was glad to hear actually Dirk talking about the collectively working together between artists to produce and distribute your films. And actually I work more in documentary, but the same goes there as well. There's too much work and too little resources for filmmakers to make a living, so it's also for them to think of how they can work together to survive, actually. So I am Annie Oost, I'm a film producer, and I work within the company Cassette for Timescapes. We produce film and cross-media projects that combine an innovative vision and a social or political engagement. We focus on creative documentary, but it can also be fiction, interactive documentary, or series. But always, I feel, with the documentary gaze in it. When they asked me to talk about distribution, I concluded that for me distribution is based on personal networks. And the more of these networks that you can combine, the bigger the potential, the distribution potential of your film will become. Let me explain this with a few examples. So, Progensky Hotel, I don't know if somebody knows this film. Nobody? Oh, okay, thanks. So, it's a fiction film by Manu Riche. Manu Riche is one of the most experienced documentary directors in Belgium, 25 years of experience. And this was his first fiction film. The film is set in Brussels in an asylum center. And as you see, it mainly plays in a building. And actually the film is much more concept-driven than story-driven. And you clearly also feel the vision of the documentary maker in this film. So this was for us a big challenge, how to distribute a fiction with that kind of character. And therefore I could access my networks in the film world. My networks in the film world, it's mainly what Dirk explained, all the organizations that were on the left part of the slide. And so it's the film funds, it's film festivals, it's sales agents, it's distributors, distributors who can bring your film to cinema, who can bring it out on DVD, VOD platforms, organizations like Canvas, Telenet, so the broadcasters. And so we wanted this film to have a full potential with these more classical windows.
So these are the classical distribution windows of film. We always start with a festival, which is the premiere of the film. We go for a national festival and an international festival, and we use this as a first promotion platform to then start to raise attention for the cinema release. Cinema release is something that happens through a distributor, although for some documentaries we don't have a distributor, so we do it ourselves, and we build this network with the cinemas ourselves. There is also a big potential in the second circuit. This is very unique in Belgium, like for example in the Netherlands it doesn't really work that well, but we have a lot of cultural centers who are ready to program a great variety of films. Then there is DVD and SVOD. So SVOD is subscription VOD, so you pay a monthly abonnement to, for example, Telenet or Netflix, for example. Then we have pay TV, which is Telenet. And then we have the free TV, so TV where you don't pay a subscription to. And then it ends with VOD. So we have in Belgium like Universiné, there is iTunes. In the US you have also a great variety of VOD platforms with all kinds of how can I say it, specific attention given to, for example, genre films or more artist films, so there's a wide variety and a huge potential there. Yeah, but important, so to access all of this is that you need to think of your marketing, and that is mostly something that artists are really scared of. Not scared of, but that they don't value as much as perhaps they should do if you want to access a bigger audience than you would expect for an artist film. In the case of Problemski Hotel, we concentrated on the name of Dimitri Verhulst, who was the author of the novel that was at the basis of this film. And actually, this name really did it for us to be able to access all these platforms, because there was a high expectation for the film, and then when people saw the film, I had the impression that often it wasn't the film they expected, but the experience was or had been satisfying for this film. It had been a film that they valued. They wouldn't have expected it, but they valued it. Perhaps you should have seen the film to really understand what I'm saying, but we don't have time here for excerpts. So then let's talk about another network, the artist network. Johan Grimopé and myself, we produced this film Double Take in 2008. And there, for this film, we accessed the classical windows, like I just explained. So it went to the Berlin Festival, to Sundance. It was sold to Finnish television, French and German television. It had a release in the US and the UK, in France and in Belgium. But through Johan Grimopé's network in the art world, it had a whole parallel life also in the art world. So galleries, collectors, exhibitions, the more art festivals. So it was screened in Tate, it was acquired by the Pinot collection, the Hammer Museum in the US, so also a worldwide network to access. And there we had to make decisions jointly. So for every country, we discussed, Johan and I, will we first have a regular film festival, or will we first accept an invitation to this or this exhibition? So for every country, we had to decide who got the premiere, in a sense. yeah, and also important when you access with an artist film, when you want to access a more regular market, is that you have to think of the basics. For example, this film is 90 minutes long, and 90 minutes is a format that can be screened in cinemas or on television. So 60 minutes, for example, is much more difficult format, and it's much easier. I mean, it's so difficult for a cinema to say, yes, we will screen a 60-minute film, basically because the audience paid the same amount for a 60-minute film as they would pay for a 90-minute film. So that's just less value for money, they say, and also it's too difficult to program it together with a short film often. And then for Johan's most recent film, it was much more difficult. This was much more an investigative documentary than that it was an art film, and so this whole film was also distributed like a regular documentary. Johan's solution there was to make a different film that is now premiering in the art world. But we accessed with this film another network, that's an impact distribution network. It's something that we invest in a lot in Timescapes. There is one person in our office who for every film designs an impact strategy. And that means that with the film we want to make as much change in society as possible. So for example, for Shadow World, we worked with a number of peace organizations that want to prevent our government to buy F-35 fighting jets, and so the film was actually used in their campaigns. So that's another way of distribution. And also for other films, we found that there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of people who don't know that your film is important to them, because they normally don't go to cinema. They normally don't watch Canvas late at night at 11 o'clock at night to see a film like this. So sometimes you really have to bring the film under their attention, and they discover that it's a film essential to their life or work. And then a last network is the academic world. It's also something that Dirk already mentioned, is the peers and the professionals. And this is a network that, for example, Elias Grootaars with his films accesses. We have Not Waving but Drowning and Inside the Distance. These are documentaries, but very high quality documentaries that are often discussed by scholars in books, or they use the film in a course. So the film gets regular attention year after year, and this can influence the lifespan of your film. So we talk here about long tail distribution. And some conclusions to end. So you have to actively exploit the potential of your film, so it won't happen by itself. You really have to work for it. Try to combine as many distribution networks as possible. Think of the essential features for a certain platform. So if you want to be in cinemas, make sure you have a 90-minute film or a 70-minute film. Think of the elements that have marketing potential. I know it's really not sexy, but it's essential. And then the quality of the film, and this is really important, is key for a long distribution life. So when we work with films, we try to do a lot of test visions. We try to show the film, discuss about the different rough cuts with people. Because it's good to have the criticism before, and a film that you have tuned upon for a long time will become a stronger film. And a good example is Bell History, the first film of Johan Guimaupré. Because it was not shown on television, it was not distributed in cinemas, But because it had been distributed for 10 years in festivals and in art exhibitions, it actually had a much bigger audience than a fiction film, a commercial fiction film that has like 200,000 visitors in one cinema release. So with our work we can also access the same audience potential, but it will just be over a longer period of time. But it's worth it, I think. Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Marie. I work at August Orts. Thank you for inviting me. August Orts is a platform, was mentioned a few times before by other people, platform for production and distribution based in Brussels. August Orts is the name of this man, 19th century lawyer, who has a fountain in a street named after him, August Orts Street. And it's a street in Brussels which has a nice art center which is called Beerschober. And we have Helena here today. And August Orts, I'm going to keep it rather brief, but my PowerPoint is more on August Orts than on distribution because I thought that we would address more distribution matters later on when we talk more as a group. So I'm going to keep it rather brief. 10 years ago, this was us. This is Herman Asselberg, Sarah Stijnen, Anouk de Klerk, Manon de Boer and me. So we started with an office with no money, but there was this residency and there was this big enthusiasm of 4 artists who had been working individually already for quite some time. So they each had their own networks, their own parcours. And they decided to join forces to see what could happen if they tackle some issues together on production and distribution. And so this is us on the anniversary of 10 years. And in these 10 years, the core of our activity has been production and distribution. This is a timeline where you can see all the titles that we've made. The length of the arrow is the duration of the production process. The higher up is the budget that was needed to make the production. It's just to give you an idea of the diversity of titles that we have made. Some, as you can see, were made like in a split second with no budget. Some were needing a big budget and took lots of years to materialize. The films that are made are also very diverse in terms of themes, forms, duration. I guess what they all have in common is that there's an artist behind the work. So I just have a few stills of the works which also reflects the diversity in presentation already a little bit. So you have a 16mm projection installation, you have a video that was made to accompany a music piece, a solo show which is centered around one feature film documentary. From the beginning, the platform was meant to be open, so we have guest productions. And guest productions can be young people coming in, like Sophie Benoit. We have worked with more established artists like Dora Garcia, with whom we made the Joyce Society, which was premiered at Venice Biennial. We have guest productions with people from Belgium, like Siren Etan living in Brussels, or with more international artists as Joachim Koester. This is a photo during the film shoot at Stuk, another art center. So what is really nice about my job is that we combine production and distribution. And I think it was already also part of the former presentations, is that these two phases are often like linked, and it's nice to use already your imagination and where would I like to present my work later on, already during the production process, and vice versa during the distribution
strategy that you think of all the partners that were involved during the production process. We keep track of the agenda of wherever we show our catalog, and it's, I think if I compare it with what Amy was showing more as a sort of a classical approach toward distribution, we very rarely have cinema distribution. We have had some broadcasting, but also rarely. We are mainly active in a very diverse field of art centers, festivals, biennials, events. The academic, as you pointed out, is also very a lively field. What I'm really happy about is that a lot of the titles have a very long life, because, and I don't know exactly why it is, but it's maybe also because especially in the arts field, you don't have the expire date, like in the film festivals, when your film is 2 years or 3 years old, you will have difficulty to still be able to access a festival. But usually museums, galleries, art centers, they are not so keen on premieres or on the newest pieces by artists. I mean, I'm saying things in general, it's not always the case, of course. A few slides. From day one, we could, as a platform, we could use the network of each of the artists behind the network. So from day one, distribution was international. Just the more green you go, the more presentations we have. We haven't covered the whole world yet, but we're doing what we can. Some very complicated charts that I made on the distribution revenue. The first one is the number of screenings, just to give you a rough idea of how intense the distribution is. And the other one is the distribution income, because I think, indeed, like Dirk pointed out, it's very important to think about the exchange, like the workloads that you invest and the technical costs that you have that involve distribution and the income. We try as a platform to ask very often for a screening fee, but it doesn't always work out as we would like it to work out. Of course, as a platform, it's easier to ask for a fee than if you would be an individual artist asking for a fee, I guess. But as you can see, as an average per year, we try at least to have like around 10,000, 12,000 euros coming in through distribution, which is then split 50-50 with the artists. It's a nice amount, but you could never get a wage out of this amount. I mean, just to put it a little bit into perspective. So we are very happy that from 2008 onwards, Oostwards is structurally funded by the Flemish community. This is an example of a feature film documentary that we made, Spectre, by Sven Augustijnen in 2011. Just to, I don't want to go into detail, but I thought that this might give some hint of the diversity of where titles end up. And I think the diversity of audiences is great. And I'm not only talking like various countries, but also like we've had festivals like Festival International du Film Policier, which I mean I was like super happy that for once I make a film that can end up in a festival for policier films. Or you have the Vdrome platform that Philippa will discuss later. You have I don't know, like an arts, more performance arts festival like the Kunstenfestival. You have long-term solo exhibitions, and it's very hard, like thinking if you need to say something in general about distribution that is successful. I do still believe in the power of the work itself, like that if some people see your work and you manage to make them fall in love with the work, I do really feel that this is the most effective way to get your work out, that you will find that you have ambassadors that will spread the word and pass it on to other people. Not to say that besides this, there's still the very heavy workload of just making sure that people know about your work. This is just to finish up that besides production and distribution, we also are involved in discourse. This is together with Courtisan and Argos. We have descent sessions where we invite filmmakers and do screenings, and we also work on an international European collaboration called On and For Production, where we try to share what we as a platform gain in experience in production and distribution on a more international level. Voila. And this is the end, just to say, I think each artist, each little, how would you say, element in a chain of production, distribution, whatever, is only as strong as all the collaborations, partnerships, people that help you out. So this was a list that we made of all the people we ever co-produced with in these 10 years, and that's something to cherish, I guess, these collaborations. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Helena Kritis and I'm a programmer for Beursschouwburg, which is a multidisciplinary art center in Brussels. I am part of a team of 3 there and I do the program for audiovisual and visual arts. I also recently started working for the International Film Festival of Rotterdam, where I'm also part of a programming team of 5 people for the experimental short film program. As Godin mentioned and Dirk as well, we're in the upper echelons of this kind of distribution, workflow or distribution chain, where the work passes from the artist to the producer, sales agents, distributors to the programmers. And both in Beursschouwburg and in Rotterdam, we are the next to last chain, piece of the chain before the film actually hits the audience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we program in Beursschouwburg and how we program in the Rotterdam Film Festival, which I think might be useful, a little look behind the scenes. I've been working at Beursschouwburg for nearly 10 years, which is a long time, but only the 5 last years as a programmer. Before I started, there was no real structural film or audiovisual arts program. We had the occasional screening, we had the occasional exhibition, but we didn't put the kind of budget in there as we do now, or the kind of logistics or frequency. This also meant that when 5 years ago there was not really a big audience for this. We really had to build it from the ground up. And of course, Beursschouwburg is an institution. We are occupied with presentation. So for us, the audience is of course a very crucial factor. So we were developing this program, and I really had not the idea, but the feeling that the way to access this audience is really through the artist. Marie was mentioning ambassadors. This is exactly what we thought as well. If we can support the artists and create the right circumstances, pay them proper fees to show their work, then this whole ecosystem which orbits around the artists, their friends, their family, their supporters, the people that are interested in their work, we as Beursschouwburg, as an institution, will also be able to tap into that. So that was in fact, from the beginning, my main preoccupation is supporting the artists. And we're doing this in a few different ways that grew over the years. Marie again mentioned very briefly the residency. August Ort, they had a residency for 3 years in Beursschouwburg. So the residency was already in place, and this is something that I continued. And a couple of years ago, I invited Gerard-Jan Klaas and Olivia Rochette to do a 4-year residency. I guess some of you know them because they're also KASK alumni. They were really young when we offered the residency to them. They just graduated 1 or 2 years. But I had a sense that there was something there, and it was a stroke of luck maybe, I don't know, I just think they were really talented. But it was before Sapsian was founded and before they made Grand Travaux, and I think this residency really gave them an opportunity to develop all these things in a kind of a safe environment. We offered them a budget every year of, I recall, 4,000 or 5,000 euros, no strings attached. We co-produced their works. I offered them a carte blanche to really break into the program and program their own film evenings, so things like that. And this program is still continuing, so the next resident for between 2017 and 2021 will be Christina Stuhlberger, also recently graduated filmmaker, and she has really great plans that I'm very excited about developing with her. So this residency thing is one way of supporting the artist in a really long-term way. Another thing, a big thing, also something that Dirk talked about, is these co-productions, which is, like he said, it's very common in performing arts. It was a bit less common in venues like Beurschouwburg to co-produce moving images. If we look at Beurschouwburg and we put it next to Vooruit or Buddha or Stuk right now, they're also co-producing, but they didn't do it a lot in the past, except for the exhibitions probably. But it was kind of, at that time, not done that much, at least not in a structural way. But at this point, we are co-producing between like 6 to 10 projects a year, where we put in like 3,000-4,000 euros. We offer them, in return, we ask for a Belgian or at least a Brussels premiere or avant-premiere. It's a mix between really young artists that are making their first or second film. We even once co-produced a graduation film. But we also support more established artists, mid-career artists that are still having difficulties finding funding. So we definitely don't only go for the up-and-coming artists. There's also a mix in not disciplines, but like content-wise, it ranges from creative experimental documentaries to video art to really artist moving images. I do make some clear choices in the sense that we hardly ever program narrative fiction or animation film or really conventional documentaries, which is really I decided because of the fact that these other films that we usually co-produce, there's really a lack of spaces for showing that type of work. I mean, the regular feature fiction films, they have quite some more opportunities to be shown, which is not always the case with moving image work. How do we choose these co-productions? It's really a bit network, word of mouth. I have a lot of colleagues, friends that are teaching, so I ask them like, who are the people to watch out for? I go to film festivals. I get emails in my inbox, so many emails, which I cannot always answer and handle, but sometimes I do, and then sometimes there's something there. We also work through partners. We've co-produced several projects together with Argos, for instance, or together with August Ort, things like that. There are some problems that we encounter with this system of co-production. The results can sometimes be really hit or miss, because if we co-produce from the start. So an artist comes to us and they come with an idea and a plan, and there's no images, there's nothing, there's hardly even a scenario, and I really co-produce on the basis of trust in the artist. And so we put the money in, we go for the contract, and then in the end there's a film there, and it might not always be a success, but I've never once doubted any choice that I made. I mean, sometimes a filmmaker can make a project which is less good, but it's still important in the career path, and then we're still happy to have been able to support the film or that project. Time frames are a huge issue. We talk with an artist, the film is going to be ready in 2 years, it's never ready in 2 years. There's always problem with finding the rest of the funding, and then the camera guy breaks his leg, or the editor doesn't have any time, or things like that, which is of course for me an issue, because main concern is the program, and I'm programming in advance, and then all of a sudden there's no films, but the money is also gone because it's locked in this production. So these are kind of like the pitfalls. Also, sometimes projects become a whole lot bigger than Beursschouwburg, and all of a sudden we can no longer offer a premiere, which is usually the thing that we get in return. So these are some of the things that we have dealt with, but I think we have a really nice list of co-productions that we've done since the last 5 years, and I'm really hoping that it can grow. Voilà, enough about Beursschouwburg. Let's move to the Rotterdam Film Festival. We could go to the website or not, you could look it up on your smartphone. So very broadly, I've only been recently working for the film festival, but I can give you a little bit of very broad general information of how it works behind the scenes. So most film festivals, international film festivals, they have different program sections. They almost always have competitions, international competition, local competition, first film competitions. They have retrospective programs, they have thematic programs, or compilation programs, short film, mid-length, all of these things. I work for the Rotterdam Film Festival, which has a very extensive short film selection. I think it's one of a few in Europe, except if you look to, proper short film festivals like Oberhausen, For the Rotterdam Film Festival, our team of 5, we select about 250 short films out of 3,000 plus entries, let's say. And the short film program also has its own competition. It's a Tiger Awards for short film. So of those 250 films, about 25 compete for 3 prizes of about 3,000 euros. I'm talking about short film, but what is short film, or what do we consider short film to be in the Rotterdam Film Festival? So anything under 45 minutes is selected or discussed in our team. Although films up to 60 minutes can also be part of the competition, which is maybe a little bit confusing, because if the film is between 45 and 60 minutes, it goes to the mid-length programming team, which is a different team. Mid-length, though, there's only a dozen films that are selected for the mid-length program. The short film team is 5 programmers. We also have 1 or 2 program advisors. For instance, there's Eileen Nash, who's based in New York. She's a film curator, and she has a program called Projections at the New York Film Festival. So she scouts for us in America. Then there's also Peter Taylor, who was a former member of the programming team and who's now at the Berwick Film and Media Arts Festival up in Scotland. So those are 2 people that send us like lists and tips. So they're not part of the regular team, but we do brain drains with them. How do we get from 3,000 films to 250 films? A lot of watching films. So first of all of the programmers do their own research. We all go to film festivals, we go to biennials, we go see gallery shows, we talk to people, we have artists that we follow, word of mouth, network, all of these things. And if we see something that we like, we get a Vimeo link, we put it in a huge Excel file. And then we ask somebody else in the team to watch it. And if there's then 2 people that like it, then we may ask a third to watch it, and if he likes it as well, then it goes to the communal viewing, let's say. Every 2 weeks we have a viewing day in Rotterdam. It's a full day. We go inside the cinema and we watch one film after the other. That's been approved by at least 2 people. So that's how we narrow it down. Next to the own research, there's of course the open call. So there's 2 entry dates. There's also an entry fee. So if you go through the proper channels, you usually pay, 25, 30 euros or something to enter your fee to have a chance at selection. When the films come in, they are divided by regions. So we're 5 programmers, each of us have regions assigned. And the back office at the Rotterdam Film Festival they check all of the entries that are coming in, and then they see, this is a film from France, goes to that programmer, this one is from, I don't know, Lebanon, goes to that programmer. So that's how it all gets divided. And then we start the same process. Somebody watches it, writes an assessment. If it's good, then it goes to another viewer. If it's not good, then it's just rejected, and that's the end of the line for that particular film. Some practical tips when you want to enter a film for Rotterdam or maybe other festivals as well. Festivals really prefer world or international premieres. So be smart about this. Like, don't just show your film wherever in the beginning. Try to make a decision. Try to get it into an A-list festival first. And if that doesn't work, you can step down. Also know which festivals you're applying to. For instance, the short film program in Rotterdam is mainly experimental. So if you made like a very traditional short fiction film and it's a really good film, then still it might not be selected because it's just not the kind of program that the Rotterdam Film Festival is showing. I mean, you have documentary film festivals and all of these things. So do your research, otherwise you lose a lot of money because every time you pay entry fees. Write a good synopsis. I mean, it's really important. Not too short, not too long, not too cryptic. When you're watching, like me, when I'm watching like 30 films in a row, I mean, it's super hard when you don't know anything. We really need to make quick assessments, and sometimes we don't have the time to watch 50 minutes if it takes us at least 20 minutes to finally figure out what the film is about. So be a little bit pragmatic about it. A good quality Vimeo, super important. English subtitles, make sure it's in order. Also put the synopsis already in the Vimeo link, the credits, put everything there. Less time for the programmer to look and search for all that information. And yes, this is really the way that programmers watch the films. It's on their laptop, it's everywhere. I watch films on the train, I watch them at home on my flat screen TV. Yeah, that's just the way it works, and there's so many people, yeah, you should watch it in really like a black box and put on good it doesn't work like that. We're watching 600-700 films in 3 months. We are doing it this way. So a good quality Vimeo is just super important. Website as well, it can only help. That's in general one of the big things that has changed over the years, I think. It's only like 3, 4, or 5 years ago that we're doing everything on DVDs, and all of a sudden it's completely changed and it's become much easier, and then also a lot more complicated because the avalanche of Vimeo links is, I mean, it's so easy, and so in this way for us it gets a little bit harder. Maybe a controversial remark that's specifically to the Rotterdam Festival, like I explained. If your film is under 45 minutes, it's part of the official short film program, and then it means that you have 1 chance in 250 of your films to be selected. If it's between 45 and 60 minutes, you have 1 in 12 chances maybe, because the mid-length selection is like only 12, 15 films. So when your film hits the 45-minute mark, maybe you should really consider if you cannot shave up 1 or 2 minutes. I know it's controversial, the film is as long as the film should be. I'm just putting it out there. And then finally, if you have contacts, teachers, people that helped you out, use them to maybe get an entry fee waiver. Us at Rotterdam as well. If you send in your film through me or through one of your teachers that send this through me, then I can make sure that you don't have to pay the €25 fee. It works a lot like this also in other festivals. So when you start making films and you start going to festivals and networking, this is really something that you should also always keep in the back of your mind. If you don't know the programmers, you can send them emails, but it's not gonna really make a difference. The personal contact is really important. Okay, I think I overstepped my 15-minute mark. I will leave the mic to Philippa. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for
Thank you for inviting me, and Luke and Godard, to be here. Well, I'm the last, but hopefully not the least. And pursuing on this series of exchanges on both circulation and distribution and exhibition, I'm going to follow on the Bushburg's wake, and also present let's say an invention or an infrastructure that is very much invested in combining the distribution with the exhibition of artists, with artists moving images, let's say. And what I thought about bringing here is just somehow a way to tell the story of a project, and how to share the inception, the ideas behind, the desires behind creating something, and what it became, and a little bit of its history. So it's a little bit of a story of how something comes into being, and and it's interesting because, of course, I mean, we're still many that are interested in this field, but at the same time we're not that many, so we have echoes, and we talk to one another, and what the different people do resonates with what other people. So we one of these big resonances is that when we started, which was at the end of January of 2012, we started with a work which was produced and was made by one of the founders of August Orts, with Sven Augustin and Spectrus, which was presented for a week in a project that exactly came into being by a very different request from what it actually became. So a very small group of people, mostly me, someone who then became the film curator at Tate Modern, Andrea Lisoni, and a curator based in New York called Jens Hoffman, were approached by an Italian art magazine who had, until then, apart from the eventual focus on artist cinema, had very little relation to this field. And the magazine is called Mousse, and Mousse approached us exactly in this boom of somehow the art world with artist film and artist video, or with time-based media in general, because as maybe you are already aware of, or you will be aware of, the art world can be a very unfaithful lover and can go from different passions quite quickly, and we need to grab our moment and make sure that we get the best of this relationship. And there was this inception, and it's still very present, of art world's engagement and passion for all time-based media. Works on the one hand related to institutional politics, with the fact that you can turn an exhibition or a program into an event by presenting works that have a specific duration, and that creates a sense of uniqueness. On the other hand, by a real desire to rediscover and represent practices and gestures that were beyond the strict objectual nature of making painting, sculpture, installation, so on. And so the editor of Mousse magazine approached us and asked us to help them to create an artist film festival in the city where they're based, in Milan. We had a couple of meetings, and very quickly we realized that it wouldn't make sense to create yet another small film festival dedicated to a very specific audience, and a local audience, and that it would be, we believe that it would be more important to try. I'm not saying that locality is not fundamental, and that placeness is not fundamental, and also that the experience of the cinema, of going together, watching something together in a movie theater, in a space that has a tradition of over 100 years of being made in such a way that enhances our viewing experience as much as possible, is not fundamental. But what we were trying to do was not bypass such systems, such apparatuses, but try to create a shared mode of viewership that would allow people in the four corners of the world to see works that, due to their nature, due to the fact that they have awkward temporalities that don't necessarily get to be shown in either mainstream or art house cinemas, or due to the fact that some of them are conceived to be seen on the space that is not the space of the movie theatre, but is the space of the installation or the museum, or due to the fact that they are made by artists and filmmakers who are not necessarily that known, don't reach very wide audiences. So they're shown in some film festivals, generally in the more experimental sections of film festivals, as the ones of the shorts of Rotterdam, for instance, or that they're shown in exhibition spaces, from artist spaces to museums and commercial galleries. And therefore that they have a fairly limited circulation, and we thought it would be important to add or to extend the lifespan of these works, and to allow that people who don't necessarily live in the big urban centers where generally these works circulate, or that don't necessarily go to the major film festivals that have a dedication and an interest in artist cinema, to watch them. You know? This coincided, this is just an autobiographical parenthesis, this coincided with my move, for a certain period I moved from London, where I still live, to Milan, and I get this anxiety by feeling that I was missing everything, that everything was happening in London, and then suddenly I'm in Milan and nothing happened. So love was the best excuse I had to move to Italy, but it was also what was preventing me from seeing everything that I was hearing about. So I was getting more and more anxious, and this was also a way to say, okay, let's make sure that people like me are not being frustrated by we don't have to be in the big cities to watch everything. You know? So we can find a way that we can watch works that we've been hearing of and we're curious about. And also our desire was that of not replacing any kind of other infrastructure for circulation or distribution, but using the internet as a way to circulate moving images due to their intrinsic nature of a material that can be reproduced. No? So it's like circulating an image. Doesn't mean that if next month there's a show somewhere close to you, for instance, Lily Rayo, there was film in which the work is installed in the way in which she conceived, in the way in which she was thinking that visitors' bodies should be arranged and seated and so on and so forth, with a certain sound, that you wouldn't say, oh, I watched it on Vdrome, but I only watch it, so I want to see how she installed, no? Or I want to see the real thing. No? I've seen Sven Augustin and Spectres on Vdrome, but then it's difficult to focus, I stopped to go and eat something, or I was doing something else. I want to see it properly in the cinema. So it's more to just give you an opportunity to watch something that doesn't replace let's call it the real experience. And so Vdrome, when we started thinking about what to create, we started thinking about a name. And we thought about many names, many silly, some less silly. And then we thought it would be interesting to pay tribute to one of the figures that very early in the mid-60s really believed in the possibility of having an international circulation and distribution, a network of sites where people connected by satellites could be watching and having similar watching experiences all over the world. And this was Stan van der Beek, who in his Intercom manifesto wrote exactly about his desire to have these different movie dromes, as he called them. Generally, when you think about MovieDrome, if you've ever seen a portrait of Stan van der Beek, you think about this half circle, this adapted sort of silo for serials that he adapted to cinema and so on. So we thought it would be the idea of this circulation more than the real physical space of it. many people ask us if we're quoting Cronenberg's Vdrome. So then it's also there, but the main reference is Stan van der Ven. And not only that, but our reference was the cinema, the temporality of the cinema. So our idea and our desire was that now it's 14 days, every 14 days that we show the work, the website or Vdrome would become that work. So we decided that our archive would not be made of other images. There's nothing to compete with this work. Also to go beyond this rabbit hole that is the internet, where you enter a site and then suddenly you're watching 5 other things at the same time. So you can only watch, it's a little bit of a mild dictatorship. You can only watch one workout at a time. As in a normal cinema, you can watch it for a certain amount of time and then it goes. This is a way exactly to become the work, but it's also a way that allows us to present works that otherwise wouldn't be the artists, like 90% of the artists that we're showing wouldn't want to have their works permanently showed online. Right? So this is also a way to present these works that are otherwise not available online, and by assuring this very specific duration. And it's not only about presenting works that are not available online and making sure that they're only available for a certain moment, but it's also about framing. Framing is our obsession, in the sense that we don't want to just drop things there, but we want to create a way that welcomes viewers in a similar way that a film festival generally has a Q&A before the film, a question and answer dialogue moment. So for every work that we present, we commission a writer or someone who is familiar with the work of these artists, with the practice or with the topics that the work is addressing. And we ask them to just, like in Q&A, to ask them some questions, some related to content, some related to form, to edit, montage, relation to sound, that allow us as viewers to have, to be taken through the work and to have access to the ideas, the imaginary, the sources, the references used by these artists. So in this case, for instance, we asked a Swedish curator, Maria Lind. We generally ask the artists who they would like to work with. And in this case, Lili suggested Maria because they've worked together for quite a while. And we invited Maria Lind to just do the intro. And instead of doing a very classical Q&A system, she just gave Lili a set of keywords and she asked her to develop them. And so after the period in which the work is shown, Vdrome becomes the following film, and these conversations go to our archive. And so the archive accumulates all the exchanges with a couple of still images and all the dialogues, all the introductions that have been commissioned. Just scrolling down a bit. This is of this year's program, and we can just go to the first year. We can go. This, I think it's a text more. No, it's a. So you see, and then you have the questions and answers, and so on and so forth. Now, very often people ask us about the criteria. How do we choose films? Which is the question also for programmers. No? Our obsession, let's say, particularly me and Andrea, our obsession is that of imagining the future of moving images. We strongly believe, and maybe those who are more into film studies will hate me by saying this, but I strongly believe that those who are imagining the future of cinema, inventing languages, inventing forms of imaginary, shaping new approaches, offering new visions, don't necessarily come from a background in film, or are not as invested in having a dialogue with the conventional canon of mainstream cinema, but come from a background or are interested in the dialogues between cinema and other disciplines, and very often they are artists or are people who are also in dialogue with the context of visual arts. No? And this is exactly because they're freer from the very strong and very important canon of cinema. So we are very interested in together with these artists, thinking the future of moving images in general, and presenting works that have a sort of new in projection and invention, and that offer new images of any kind. But this, of course, is very vague. The fundamental criteria is that of presenting works, due to the fact that we're online, due to the fact that we are seen in a support which is that of the laptop, that is already asking for so many, where you can accumulate so many functions and possibilities. We try that our works have a kind of straightforward narrative structure, so that you can follow them. So we don't have entirely abstract works, even though these boundaries are still very unclear. We present works that were done in the last 5 years, so that they're quite recent, that, as I mentioned, are not available elsewhere online. And I just think about other criteria, yeah, and that they're generally more or less a minimum of 12 minutes, let's say. They have a minimum length of 12 minutes, they have no maximum length. Then we take the advantage of very specific occasions, like breaks for a summer break or a winter break, to show works that are outside of this format. In some cases we've presented live simulations. Last year we had a live simulation by this American artist called Ian Cheng, in which it was the only occasion in which, from the unicity of having each one of us watching the film on Vdrome, and we can be watching it in different moments, it was the only moment in which all the viewers were coordinated. It was a little bit like a webcam of a zoo. There was this creature that was going around, so whenever you went there, the creature was exactly in the same moment for all of us. Or in other cases, we've presented works that are chronologically outside of this 5-year year. We had Bruce Bailey's film during our summer break as well. Or we had a sort of video clip inspired work by Jesse McLean during the summer, and so on and so forth. So these special occasions allow us to just show something that is a little bit different. In terms of the ownership, let's say, of the films and of the works that we present, which is something that we often have to do with. So it's curious because, well, tomorrow you're going to be, hopefully, because it's quite unmissable, you're going to be listening to Erica Balsam, and she's most likely talking about her last book on distribution. And she makes an analysis of Vdrome, and she says that many of the artists who we present work with commercial galleries. I was a little bit offended by that, and Erica, being a dear friend, was like, let me go back and check. Because it was something that we didn't do consciously, let's say. On the one hand, I would say that there are so many, the art world, there's so many art worlds, and there's a very big difference between a mainstream commercial gallery or a very small commercial gallery, and then, especially in the last 2 years, that scenario changed drastically, but it's still very interesting to go to Vdrome's works and see how they were commissioned, how they were produced, and who they belong to, which is very weird since we're allowing for these works to circulate in a rather free and public way. And we had some works that were commissioned, and they are distributed by the conventional distribution channels that we have at August Orts or Lux in London or Video Data Bank. And in other cases we have works that are privately owned by a foundation. For instance, we had a huge negotiation with the Vdrome Foundation when we wanted to show the works of this Thai artist called Apichapong Verizataku, who was commissioned by the Vdrome Foundation to make these 2 short videos, and that was kind of a nightmare. We have works that are entirely managed by galleries. For instance, one of our biggest headaches was when we presented a work by Camilla Rohr, who's a very mainstream, very famous young, even if she's very young, she's very famous. She just got this carte blanche at the Palais de Tokyo to do whatever she wants with that space. And she's backed by huge galleries, and when we showed a work of hers called Strife of Love in the Dream, we had to sign a whole contract with a gallery, with Kamel Manour, and then suddenly it happened. And this is another parenthesis that sometimes, and we have someone who's only managing this and making sure it doesn't happen, it happened that the work leaked and it went on Karigaga, which is this website for the sharing of works. And it's really funny because the only works that leak are actually the ones that are made by huge mainstream artists, like the one we showed of Pierre. And so we were almost being sued by the gallery by allowing this to happen. And of course we try as much as possible to prevent this from happening. But as Kenneth Goldsmith, the founder of UbuWeb, says, if you don't want it to circulate, don't put it online. But ultimately, I think, what can you do with it? You can save it, you can have it and watch it every night, but you can't do more than that. And I'll finish exactly talking about viewership and about numbers and about circulation. We have an average viewership for 2 weeks of 4,000 viewers. This doesn't mean that everyone watches the films from the beginning to the end, but each work is seen by more or less this number. We have some cases that go way beyond these numbers and some way below. And our aim is exactly that, of also, by not relying on the classical infrastructures for the viewership and exhibition of works like film festivals and galleries, that we also reach other audiences. One case in which we managed to do this, and it's quite symbolic, is at a certain point we got so surprised because we started having viewers and viewers and viewers for a film by this historic conceptual artist called Lawrence Wiener, who made a work called Water in Milk Exists, which is it's a pornographic work. It's a film made by an artist, but it's a porn film. And of course we were joking and we were saying, oh, porn sells and how can this be possible? And then we realized that someone uploaded a link directly to Vdrome to YouPorn, which is crazy. So we finally reached other audiences, and we're hoping that the viewers of YouPorn would continue coming to Vdrome and see other works. You know? At the same time, this gave us a huge problem because the work that we had just shown before, without even thinking, was a really interesting film by this artist called Adelita Husni Bey, called Postcards from the Desert Island, which was entirely shot in an école libre in Paris, in a free school, with kids, in which she asks kids to invent a new way of self-organization. And she's filming the way in which these kids, who are being brought up with a very informal mode of education, work together. But because it's kids, we had to write to each parent asking for the permission to show their kids online. and this was how work, we did that, and then suddenly when we realized the Vdrome, it's like, oh my god, the parents of the kids will go back to Vdrome because we are in the same space. You know? It's like a cinema. A cinema accumulates the history of all the films in its screen that have been shown there. And we were imagining, as we were happy to imagine the poor viewers to encounter some experimental works on Vdrome, we were terrorized of thinking about the parents of these kids coming back to Vdrome the week after and finding a porn where they very lovely, naive kids were building a new world just a week before. So maybe we can also open the conversation later, and I think this is mostly what I wanted to say. And we're going to celebrate 5 years in January, hopefully with a work so remarkable and so unique as Sven Spectrus. And so yeah, thank you.
Are there some questions already from the audience after the presentations that you've heard?
It's like a concrete question. Well, I'm now in English. Yeah. I'm composing like a plan for distribution for a short experimental film of my film. And we're now looking for the festivals, like the known places, short film depot, film freeway, those online platforms where you like make a form of your film and you put them to the festival. But is there some kind of platform for more the gallery side of distribution? Because we think that there might be a way of showing it in galleries too. I don't know, maybe it's more for you, Marie, that you don't.
No. Maybe you have guessed already because you've been searching for it and not finding it. Of course, I think it was Philippe who said galleries, you have as many galleries as you have colors or whatever. You have good galleries, you have bad galleries, you have promotional, you have commercial, and then you have a few nice ones, or maybe even more than a few, but it's all about personal network. There's often this tension, if you put it really black and white, that people say film is democratic. You know, everybody can send in their film to whatever film festival. Visual arts, that's hierarchy, network. Well, it's too much black and white, but there's something to say about the whole process. Yeah. I don't know the gallery system that well. I only know the galleries that the artists of August Works work with. Luckily, they have very nice galleries that actually engage in the production process, in the distribution process as well. And for example, from them, you hear these stories of people bringing in their portfolios and stuff. Doesn't work at all. It's all about being out there, making sure they know you, just like in the film world, yeah.
I could just add something to what Marie was saying, which is the fact that the figure of the curator is behaving more and more as a middleman, that is, as an intermediary between artists and all kinds of institutions, from commercial to non. And very often to manage to make sure that curators watch works is a good way to somehow enter in dialogue if you're interested with commercial galleries, because curators very often are not only asked to make shows, but also to give advice, to suggest artists, because it is very hard for an artist to knock at the door of a gallery and say, here is what I did. Even if they're outstanding, unfortunately it doesn't work like that, it's not very democratic. And therefore, maybe trying to expand the viewership by having figure like exhibition makers can facilitate a closeness.
And maybe to elaborate on this question, I was also wondering more to Marie and Henny, like you both mentioned that works that you produce and maybe distribute have like two lives. One is very clear in like a more classical single screen film scene, and the other is like a bit vaguer life maybe in the art world. I was wondering if you, because the way you describe the production for me it looked very much like a classical film production. And can you maybe take elements from the art world, like selling work, for example? Can you take parts of that with you in the production, so that you know probably we will sell this film or video 5 times, we get a percentage of the sales, and did it become part of the production as well?
Yeah, like for when we produce Johan Krumelpré, the film is also created as an art edition, and so, for example, 15 editions, and we sold like 5 to 7 of them before the film was made to use it as production funding. And then that was combined with regular funding from the film fund. And then afterwards, of course, these people or had it in their collection or received the premiere, so to speak, in that country above a film festival or another kind of exhibition.
I just want to add maybe is that the market for artist moving image is very small. So I'm also wondering why you would particularly, for example, for Mike and David, be interested in galleries as a target. I think it's much more interesting to go to art centers or to, I don't know, like you have so many exhibition platforms available. Do it yourself, yes. Because if I look at least at, I don't know if we ever had, yeah, we had it once also or twice, that there was a pre-sale and that part of this money went into the budget of the film, but that's like, yeah, only for, I don't know how many films we made so far, so it's like, it's very rare that it happens. The money then often is needed for the production, so it's not even money that you can live on, so like, I think best is not to get your aims too high in the selling of works. Of course, it's nice when it happens. Maybe you can.
What I think you should do is like look at the website of August Ort and see where the artist's films have played. And then you can make a selection and see what could be applied to your film.
But I'm guessing also it has more to do about the particular work, because this Mike Neville is more like a filmmaker who shows at film festivals, and she has a reputation. She built up a reputation for that, and that she's now like looking for another like a more intimate setting to present her work. I think that has something to do with it.
From my perspective, as like the beginning distributor, to know what are the options. Now, I haven't discussed this with Mike and Vu yet. It was just more from like now you're here, I can ask what maybe the options, so I can present it to her or to my other producers. So it was more from, and not only the galleries, also the art centers, or like what are the canals next to the movie festivals or the no canals or the
But she was talking also about the possibility, because, I mean, this particular case in this particular film is such an intimate one and such a personal one. She was looking into online viewing just because of this one-on-one situation. So it's probably, maybe that direction is worth exploring, because it is quite new territory. So maybe it's worth to be the explorer for this new territory. Yeah. Are there some other questions in the audience?
Is there maybe some way that artists can protect itself at the beginning already when start work in collaboration with producers and distributors and something? Because, like you said before, artist is always the last one in the chain, and what would be the best approach from artist's point of perspective to step into the world? Because we are kind of still protected in this school system, and we don't have really this reality check yet. It's not happening, so I don't know what would be your advice to this.
I think, I mean, I can't remember, I think you said this, I think because you speak about this school, you're a student here, I guess, yeah. So we are teachers here. We are connected with this field. We are in the middle of it. And so I think that's a suggestion that was made, is to contact your teachers and to use them, I mean, in between, but use them, voilà, use them, to make this contact with the field and through them, yeah, to make your first steps. Very concretely, this could be that that your teachers, your mentors, that they send on a Vimeo link to programmers, curators that they know, or that they talk to you about possible festivals that are open for first films, let's say. So I think through that, but also of course there's a number of festivals that are here. There's Courtisan, which is also connected to the school. There's L'Âge d'Or in Cinematheque in Brussels. I think it's also very important that you go out there, that you're present, that you see what your colleagues are doing who are in this field, and that you connect with them, because most of the time the filmmakers are there to present their work. And I think that's the way. It's very, it's a very concrete, human, sometimes even warm way to get your work out there. So
I
I'm
also
guessing.
meant like in a way of, for example, now I'm working this collaboration partial with Ali Parda. She made it from previous year that was on Rotterdam and it performed quite well, and after it went spread around, and it was also a graduation project, but then it was just screened like on television without contacting her, without paying her any fee. And afterwards, when she came back to ask for rights, they were like, yeah, we just did it here, it's like €1,000. Like, there was like no any agreement, there was nothing. So that's partially I'm asking, how can artists can protect itself, and it just starts without production house behind itself.
I mean, I hope it's very rare in these cases, but of course they do exist. How to protect yourself? Yeah, well, that's also a suggestion that's been given, and I always suggest it to students, is to, if you connect, if you have colleagues that you can connect with, I mean, to establish a scene or to be part of a scene, it makes you stronger. If you are an individual, you're less strong. So I think it's very important to connect with people that you can engage with, that you feel affinities with. And who knows, maybe even start a platform together. It does make you stronger. If you are part of a scene, if you are part of a collective of people, of colleagues, I think that's a possible way of dealing with these terrible situations. Yeah.
I think in the case of films, there is also the film fund where you can go to if there is really an abuse, and they prefer not to mix with these situations, but I know that sometimes they do, to protect the filmmakers and artists.
I just want to add two small things. One thing is, I think as well, I'm surprised by how many Vimeo links I get that are just downloadable. Then I'm like, that's not meant to be downloadable. So there's also a way, I think, of always being very conscious about your own work. I'm not saying you are not, but it's something that I do notice a lot. For example, in the film festival, it should be DCP that you send off, so they shouldn't have like the film physically afterwards anymore, normally. And then the other thing, I wasn't sure if you were also asking about safe environment in a relationship with a producer. And it's something that Emmy also mentioned, and you're a team. I mean, otherwise you don't work together. And I think the biggest chances for success is if you talk a lot beforehand about all possible things that can happen. Still, I know that you can't always imagine everything that will happen, but there's no reason why it should be a conflictuous relationship. You do have different hats on, but I think if you play it smartly for both parties, it's a win-win. But it's, I think it's a relationship that is very important to invest a lot of time in this kind of conversation. Yeah.
About what you mentioned in the beginning about the workload, in distributing, producing the work, taking care of things, especially when you start, when you're just on your own. Because I think Overstart started with all of you together already, so you've always had somebody taking care of these things as a main purpose. And what you advise that working together, for most of us, it's not really an opportunity that we can have somebody taking care of these things for us, so we have to do it ourselves. And it can be, because it's a lot of work, the organization itself, setting it up and doing the work can be also distracting from the thing that you want to do. It's a film, but of course it's a certain investment. We have an advice on how to protect your artistic work from all this organization work that's around distributing and everything.
Well, that's actually the reason why we started Augustos, because we saw that, like, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but of course before Augustos, for about 10 years or so, we did everything ourselves. So that's it's not like from the beginning we worked with Augustos. So and that was the reason why we decided to join efforts, because we saw that to do the production, to do the distribution of the work, we ended up being occupied with that for 95% of our time, and 5% remained to do the actual making of the film. And so we thought that if by combining efforts, by sharing the workload, kind of, that this percentage of actually doing what we are good at, or we try to be good at, there would be much more time. And but you are right. I mean, now, like there was this point where you were on a leave, maternity leave, and the distribution of Augustos just went down dramatically. So yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important to have someone. But in the beginning, I think it's important to share the work. I mean, that's also what we did in the beginning. I think it's possible, and then hopefully to find funding, to maybe engage someone to help you with this distribution, with finding the money to the production of the film. But yeah, in the beginning, we also did it ourselves.
And what I think that's also important, like now, Emmy and Marie, they are both producers, and they do a bit of distribution themselves. I think Augustos does all the distribution, mainly themselves, more or less. I mean, also more or less. But of course, you have also for short films, you have a lot of distributors like Argos, what already mentioned, Lightcone in Paris, Arsenal in Berlin, Lima in Amsterdam. Like every country has distributors that can distribute your work, and of course, it's a very big difference how active they do it. And if you have to work for it by yourself or whatsoever, but it can be quite useful, especially if you have these matters like what Marie talked about, that a film, that they ask a fee for it. Like if you have a distributor in between, and if you are contacted by people that want to screen a film, you can of course always direct them to, let's say, Arsenal, Lightcone, whatsoever. Luke in London, like an organization like that. But of course this organization has to be willing to take your work in distribution.
Yeah, and most of these organizations, they do a passive distribution. So it's a catalog that is there, and it's wonderful to be part of this catalog. But still, this idea of an active distribution, that is not the organization that is going to do it. So it's either you going to film festivals when you're there to promote your film. You meet other curators, they see your work. As what you said, there's a certain order maybe. It's I mean, you said it already, to have like an A-list festival selection in the beginning makes it easier for curators to see your work. Yeah, it takes some of the distribution work out of your hands. This way of getting your work out there. But yes, yeah, still a lot to do yourself.
I'm also producer of Atelier Fouille, and I think one
a thing which is very important is to think also about your partners with whom you are working, and also talk with them and think together, and also maybe divide the work, because sometimes they have also, of course, also their network, and everybody has his specialization, so you can really think about that. I'm thinking about a film we produced with a French co-producer, and it was also with Kunstenfestival des Arts. But everybody helped the film in this way, and you really should involve them, your partners, if the co-producers or other partners of any kind.
But I think actually what we're talking about now is also the topic of the workshop for tomorrow, the hands-on workshop that starts at 2 in Brussels. I think it's the same topic. Your film is, you finish your film and what's next? Like, is this what the workshop is about? So.
That's an invitation to go.
But perhaps on a more general note, is that I see it with all the people that I work, that they need a job besides the making their film. It's just a reality, and I don't think you can expect that you start working as an artist and can live from it. So all the people I know who have a career, so not just make one film and then are so bankrupt that you cannot make another film for the next 5 or 10 years. People are teaching, a lot of teaching jobs. People have PhDs. They have a half-time regular job in something else where they make the basic living. They work on film sets of other people, but there you have to have something beside. And then structural organization is key. So you really have to be very pragmatic about it and say, okay, on Monday and Tuesday I work for myself, these days I block, and the other days I fill with all the rest, like making living or doing distribution. It's quite pragmatic.
Only say that you're right, but it's also not. I mean, because you're saying it with maybe a bit of regret. Like it's not necessarily a bad thing that you need a job on the side. That it's sure.
To this reality. I mean, there's always some confrontation with this reality, which makes it a bit sad. But then you have to get over that and just
deal with it.
A very practical advice coming from someone who hates bureaucracy and who hates filling any kind of forms and applications. Ask for advice. Sometimes you're asked to fill in specific, to describe your work, as you were saying, or to fill in specific elements that you may think you're doing the right thing, but either contact the people who are behind the boards that are financing, or you ask the people who got finance advice on how to fill these forms, because some require that you address very specific issues that you may not even be considering, and maybe they're already in your work, but you're not putting an emphasis on. So it's really important to just ask for advice on how to fill these things, because it may change completely. It's not about how to sell yourself, but how to frame your work in a way that it becomes appealing for those who are applying for, because as you were saying, because you're not selected, it's not very often, it's not due to the quality of your work, it's due to the relevance of the work within a whole context. And if you learn to just direct it, present it, frame it within that context, it may really help the way you just feel it. I wish I could do this better as well, but
I was just wondering about this idea of the democratic film festival. I think there are a few ideas about it, but like say for example you have graduation work and a film festival asks you who was your producer or distributor, but you didn't have either. Are the films
that do not have these, are they taken seriously or are they dismissed perhaps? Or maybe
I don't think it matters at all.
alright.
If I look at Rotterdam, I mean, we look at the producers, but if there's a producer and you know it, then maybe you already have some trust. But if you don't, you just watch the film. And if it's a good film and there's no producer attached, what does it matter? I mean, that's my impression. And the way, I mean, if I look at the other programmers as well, they very actively also look at graduation projects. I mean, we had a link with all of the films from KASK, but they also had them from the schools in Holland, and they go to Le Franois. We get a whole list of titles from Le Franois. So that is not really an issue. I think it's more of an issue with funding, less so than with the film festivals. I mean, if your film is really a first film or a second film, it doesn't matter. If it's a good film, we will show it. And we watch all the films. Maybe some people were wondering, so many films, everything is watched, everything. But so if you look, these forms are crazy. There's so many things you can fill in, and then you have like producer. And I see so many applications which have like 10 times the same name. That's just the way it is. But we're scanning over this, you know, like you get it in your. It's like this whole database. We open it, we see all the films. You just watch the synopsis and the film, and then you might check the producers, but it's not the. We'll never not choose a film because there was no producer attached. Yeah.
Maybe one more question about the sort of process within the film festival and how the juries are made up, or from different sort of film backgrounds or different sort of interests.
You mean the jury or the selection committees?
Yeah, so you said the first round of sort of selection process between 2 or 3 people. So
Yeah.
who are those people, and then how does it then go to the next round, and then how are the juries set up within the selection committee?
Well, I guess, I mean, just to stress, I've only been working for the film festival for 6 months, and I see Edwin over there, who's actually been working for the Rotterdam Film Festival for way longer than me. And he's one of the lucky ones because he has his own program, so he doesn't have a team that he has to.
Is that lucky, not having a team?
But I don't know. You can have your choices be your choices and not have them dismissed by the 4 other guys of your team, which has happened to me. But no, I mean, we're a team of 5, but it's each member of the team has certain specialties, let's say. So there's one who's way more into like really more cinematographic or narrative or stuff like that, and there's another one who's really specialized in 16mm film, Super 8, really pellicule, like formal film experiments. And then there's another one who's really into, you know, internet art and more really video experiments. So each of us kind of has their specialty, let's say. But when your film is entered through the official channels and it's assigned regionally, like I explained, if I watch a film and it's like a 16mm thing and I watch it and I'm like, I'm not really sure, then I just ask for a second opinion. So that's the way that we do it. Sometimes you can watch a film and you can sense this is maybe not so bad, but I can't really assess it properly because it's not my expertise. Then it just goes to another viewer. So that's the way that we still try to give all of the films as much of a chance to get to the second rounds, basically. Yeah.
Linked to this democracy of film festivals, could you give sort of a percentage, not only of Rotterdam, but of festivals in general, about how many films are really scouted, like the programmers really go to filmmakers or producers and select them, versus films that are selected from an open call?
I can't really speak to other festivals, and I heard some numbers when they hired me, and they were saying like, for Rotterdam, for instance, like 75% is probably scouted, but also scouted to people that maybe once entered. You know, once your film is shown in Rotterdam, you're kind of like part of this whole big ecology of artists that are being followed up. You know, like your films have been shown a lot in Rotterdam. Every year we specifically ask, like, is there new work? But so yeah, it is true that if you enter, that there's a really slim chance that your film makes it to the final selection.
I'm no longer part of KASKlezing, but I was part of KASKlezing when it started as a festival. It was still more focused on short films, so the DNA of the festival really changed over the years. And I was part of the programming team for, I think, 3 or 4 years. So from day 1 till the 4th year approximately. And I think from the open call, I'm afraid to say that it wasn't, I mean, if 10%, I don't even think it was 10%.
But I think there was also when they had a competition.
There was a competition, yes, and anymore, no. And what's
So I thought maybe if you have a competition, probably more films.
It was more.
I don't know if it makes sense.
I don't know if that was the I think what was mainly what I could sense in these years of previewing all these entries that just came was that very little there was a link with the festival. So you could really sense that people, it was still physical, like was even VHS some and DVDs. But people were just sending it around in crazy amounts, I must say. I mean, it was really like the mailman coming with these huge bags every day, and we watched it all. I mean, that was the rule also, but you could feel that it was, I guess it's something that a lot of festivals must feel, that it's hard to project your DNA towards these people sending you all this stuff. Which is also very enriching. Watching stuff that is like totally out of your comfort zone is also, I mean, it's also very interesting, but yeah.
One last question.
Maybe a question to Felipe. How your team scouts films and because there's duration you talked about. And it's, I imagine there's great selection process involved with that because introducing so many works. And how perhaps that would fit in your team, and do people send you films? Do you have your mailbox inundated, or because I don't think we do a lot in home. It's really very vision.
Yeah. So the two people who mostly scout films is me and Andrea, and we do it largely from film festivals. And actually, when you were doing that question about the amount of people that just submit compared to scouting, what I was thinking is exactly that. Why do you go to a film festival? You go to a film festival to, let's say, meet old friends, that is to see new work by artists you already know. But at the same time, you go as a kind of a junkie for novelty, always hoping that you find the name of someone you've never heard of that has an amazing film. And I think festivals are always trying to balance this novelty versus the familiar. You know? And so, on the one hand, and because Vdrome, we never show an artist twice, which has been, it's becoming a challenge. But until now we haven't done it. We actually thought, now that we're turning 5 years, we should go back to the same order and show another work by all the artists we showed. But anyway, so the way we scout is, one hand, film festivals, it's our biggest source. Exhibitions, even though it's rarer and rarer to encounter new work by artists in conventional museums and institutions. We go to a lot of end of year graduation or Emily shows to see works and of students that we could show. We also have no criteria. We could show a picture from Versa Cool, and 2 weeks later we could show a work by a completely unknown or quasi-unknown artist. So we have no
we actually like this fact that it's a very horizontal platform. The selection process is then done in a fairly democratic manner, in the sense that we ask for a link, for a private link, we share it between us. And if there are more than 2 of us that like it, we show it. Or sometimes we have some kind of compromises, in the sense, I really don't like that work, but I really want to show this work that you don't like, so if we show yours, we'll also show mine. So, and if knowing our independent activities separately, you could easily find who is selecting what somehow. And we don't get many submissions. There's an email of Vdrome online that you can just see it. We don't have our emails inundated with any kind of proposal. And every time people submit, we answer and we watch the works. And we're both very happy to have people submitting their works, or friends, people we know, just suggesting works. Some great works that we showed were actually people who spontaneously wrote to us. There's a Dutch artist, Melanie Bonage, who totally out of the blue wrote to us and said, hey, I have this film, and we really liked it, and we showed it. And we have various cases of this, so we're more than open for submissions. Yeah.
Okay, then maybe to end with, I was thinking about there's also like the old school way of getting your films being shown, and it was something that Anouk already mentioned, that you should activate your teachers. The old school way is giving them a bottle of wine and giving them all the graduation films of last year, hoping that they watch it and they program it. Let me see where they are. There's a postcard, we'll also get it, and the graduation films. So that is like also a way that you can do hope you see it, and then okay, and while we are hoping that they take all the films, I would thank everybody for coming. I would please come tomorrow to Urke Balsam lecture at 5 o'clock in Beugschouwburg. Thank you all for being here, but please, of course, most of all, thank all the guests who spoke. I think it was a very interesting meeting. Thank you all. So please put your hands together one more time.